You've heard us talk about hormone therapy by Happy Mammoth many times by now. It's a supplement that helps women maintain optimal hormone levels with over 50,000 glowing reviews from women all over the globe. 98% say that they would recommend it to friends and family. And that's why we're recommending it to you. Now we can take those hormone harmony results even further by pairing it with Happy Mammoth's probiotic collagen protein. It helps restore gut lining integrity, promoting overall hormone balance. It also helps relieve occasional bloating, reduce sugar cravings, and helps you feel satisfied longer. Because your gut directly affects your hormones, improving gut health can amplify your hormone harmony results so you feel like yourself again. Happy Mammoth is dedicated to making women's lives easier, and that means using only science-backed ingredients that have been proven to work for women. They make no compromise when it comes to quality, and it shows. Right now, you can try prebiotic collagen protein and hormone harmony risk-free and get 15% off your entire order with code MurderDiaries at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use code MurderDiaries for 15% off today.
This episode is brought to you by 20th Century Studios' upcoming comedy, Ella McKay. From Academy Award-winning writer-director James L. Brooks, Emma Mackey plays Ella McKay, an idealistic young woman who juggles family and work in a story about the people you love and how to survive them. Featuring an all-star cast including Jamie Lee Curtis, Jack Lowden, Kumail Nanjiani, Io Adebri, Julie Kavner, with Albert Brooks and Woody Harrelson. Ella McKay, in theaters December 12.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses come with open-ear audio, so you can listen to your favorite music without blocking out the world around you.
Hey Meta, play Gorgeous.
Here's Gorgeous by Doja Cat.
You can also ask Meta AI questions.
Hey Meta, when's Doja Cat's next concert?
Doja Cat is playing at the Los Angeles Theater next Tuesday.
Sweet.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, available at Ray-Ban stores and other authorized retailers.
Welcome to the Murder Diaries. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Paige. Don't forget, the Murder Diaries is going to have its own feed again soon. Come January, we are so excited to move Unscripted to its very own feed and have it become its very own podcast. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting.
On the afternoon of Saturday, August 26th, 1995, 23-year-old Heather Teague planned to spend a relaxing day sunbathing on Newburgh Beach by the Ohio River. As she laid face down in the sun, a witness who was people watching from across the river through his telescope watched as a man snuck out of the woods and towards Heather. Brandishing what the witness believed to be a gun, the man pulled Heather by her hair off her chair and into the woods. What initially seemed like a straightforward abduction case led Heather's mother on a fight for justice against the Kentucky State Police. 30 years later, Heather is still missing. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Heather Danielle Teague was born on April 25th, 1972, and she grew up in Kentucky with her mother and two younger siblings. There isn't much information regarding Heather's childhood and teenage years, but we do know a couple of things. She attended high school at Webster County High School in Dixon, Kentucky. She ran track, played basketball, and was on the honor roll. She was even crowned homecoming queen. Then in 1989, Heather was the runner-up in the Webster County Junior Miss Pageant. Her classmates described her as funny, smart, and beautiful. Heather attended Western Kentucky University starting in the fall of 1990. She was on an academic scholarship. Then she left school after the 1993 spring semester, just before her senior year. Both she and her mother had decided that it was time for them to make some positive changes in their lives. Heather dreamt of studying psychology, while her mother planned on becoming a nurse. Heather had been struggling over the past few months, according to her mom, Sarah. After high school, she fell in with a bad crowd. She was dating a guy who was about 20 years older than her and had gotten involved in drugs and some other things that Sarah felt like she was struggling to get out of. She was spending the summer of '95 crashing on friends' couches. Sarah came home one evening to find Heather asleep on the couch. When she woke her, she learned that Heather had been fired from her summer job and didn't have anywhere else to go. That night, Heather left her mother's house angry. When Sarah asked her daughter why she was so angry, Heather responded, "I wish I knew." She spent her time journaling and writing poems. Sarah found her notebooks later and said that they were filled with pages and pages of poems, many detailing the anguish that Heather felt and her struggles to understand it.
One of Heather's last journal entries was found in her car after her abduction. The last 3 words were a chilling precursor to the events that would follow. It reads, "And I'm a poster child, an excuse to be wild, the epitome of a dream stopping me. Look in the mirror and see that, which has not escaped me. Feeling send an apology, but forgot to have the courtesy to say goodbye."
On the afternoon of Saturday, August 26, 1995, Heather drove her red 2-door car to nearby Henderson County. There was a beach area referred to as Newburgh Beach that ran along the Ohio River. It separated Kentucky from Indiana. Locals frequented this area to enjoy the weather, swimming, and riding ATVs. There were areas of the beach that were more secluded than others, but for the most part, there were always people out there on a warm day. Heather parked her vehicle on private property. The property was a large farm that was often used by locals for parking if they were going to the beach or hiking in the area. She walked through a wooded area and down a steep embankment that opened onto the beach. The 23-year-old was prepared for a day of sunbathing. She had a beach chair and a bag with her, and after setting up her chair and stripping down to her bathing suit, Heather decided to take off her bikini top, lie down on her belly, and tan her back. There were ATVs riding around the area, but Heather was alone in her spot. There were more people further down the beach, but none in close proximity to her. Across the Ohio River in Evans, Indiana, at least a half-mile across from where Heather was, a man named Tim Walthall was looking out the front window of his riverfront rental home through binoculars while his wife made lunch. Walthall often did this and enjoyed people watching from a distance. And on this particular day, as he scanned the beach, some movement caught his eye. Just behind where Heather was laying on her chair, Walthall saw a figure in the dense tree line. The figure was hunched down and advancing slowly towards the beach, peering over the brush. As the figure continued on, Walthall could see that it was a man. Then the man stopped suddenly, about 15 or so feet from where Heather was, as a few ATVs drove by. He appeared to wait for them to pass and then continued moving. Thinking this might have been a friend playing a prank on the girl on the beach, Walthall grabbed his high-powered telescope. He noticed that the man was tall with shaggy hair and a dark beard. He was wearing cut-off jeans and was shirtless. Walthall called to his wife, telling her that a man was stalking a woman on the beach. He watched as the man suddenly bolted forward from the brush to Heather's chair. He crouched down beside her beach chair and flung his arm across her back. Heather jerked and then suddenly went still. Walthall saw the man grab Heather by her curly brown hair. He twisted her hair and yanked her up and out of her chair. Walthall then saw a flash of silver in the man's hand. It appeared to be a gun, which was likely why Heather hadn't seemed to resist. The man continued to drag Heather off into the woods, her towel dropping onto the sand before they disappeared. Walthall continued to watch, still thinking it was possible that this was a prank and that the woman and man would come back out of the woods. But unfortunately, they never did. Walthall waited about 25 minutes before calling the Indiana State Police. He defended this delay in calling by saying he truly believed that it was a prank, that the girl would come back out of the woods and that the man was possibly her boyfriend. He finally called 911 at about 1:15 p.m. One thing that is unclear, though, is if Walthall actually called 911 or if he called the Indiana State Police directly. This matters because he lived in Kentucky. So some reports say that he had to get the number for ISP from the Kentucky State Police and then call directly. In the call, Walthall described what he'd seen and the exact location of where Heather had been. He described her as Caucasian with long, brownish black hair to the middle of her back. He said that she hadn't been wearing a bathing suit top, but the bottoms looked multicolored. He was placed on a short hold, and when the call taker came back, Walthall told him that they still hadn't come back out of the woods, and that there was only one other group of people that were further down the beach. He described the suspect as heavyset, wearing cut-off blue jeans and tennis shoes. He said he couldn't tell if the man had a full beard or just very shaggy hair, or if he was even wearing something on his face. All that he could say for certain was that it was a white man with dark hair, no shirt on, and a chrome-plated gun. The call taker asked about what the woman had left on the beach. Walthall described a blue and white lounge chair, purse, and her towel. He said that as the woman had been pulled up by the man, she'd grabbed her towel to cover her chest, but had dropped it at the tree line. Walthall said that the man had taken her up to the trees and they'd both disappeared. At the end of the call, Walthall told the call taker that it may have been nothing, but that it scared the shit out of him. The call taker tells him that they'll have someone check on it before disconnecting. The call taker then relays this information to police. A Kentucky state trooper arrived at Newburgh Beach just about 26 minutes after KSP received the call from Walthall. When the KSP trooper arrived at the beach, he found an abandoned beach chair along with a purse, shoes, a plaid shirt, shorts, a bikini top, and a towel. All of these items were in the area that Walthall had directed them over the phone. A brief search of the area didn't reveal anything out of the ordinary, though they did find a red vehicle that was still parked in the lot near the woods. Police ran the vehicle's tag and found that it was registered to Heather Teague. Her license photo matched the description of the female that Walthall had seen being forced into the woods. With this information, police were able to track down Heather's mother, Sarah. Sarah told them that she and her other daughter, Holly, had been out running errands until about 3 p.m. The Henderson County Sheriff's Office told Sarah that they'd found Heather's belongings at the beach, and that it was possible she'd met with foul play. Sarah arrived at Newburgh Beach to meet the KSP. She identified Heather's belongings as police began to widen their search of the area. The KSP performed an extensive search of the Newburgh Beach area, focusing on the wooded area where Walthall reported last seeing Heather and her abductor. They brought in divers, helicopters with infrared radars, search dogs, and officers on horseback. The dogs were able to follow Heather's scent from the beach into the woods and out into the parking lot, but they lost her scent and were unable to pick up anything else.
Reports said that there were several hundred people around the Newburgh Beach area that afternoon. Strangely, though, no one other than Walthall reported having seen Heather or the abduction.
Not long after the abduction, police were able to find camera footage from the nearby farm. The farm owners had been dealing with trespassers who had been destroying property and leaving broken bottles, trash, and drug paraphernalia throughout the farm. So, in an attempt to find the people responsible for it, the farm owners hired an insurance adjuster to film the area. The camera was fixed on the entrance to the beach. On the day of the kidnapping, the video showed Heather driving into the lot, parking her vehicle, and walking down to the beach. It also showed a red and white Ford Bronco driving by Heather's car. It was believed to be between a 1980 and 1985 model. There are also reports that at some point after Heather had gone down to the beach, someone appeared to be ransacking her vehicle, but the person couldn't be seen on camera. Trooper Larry Abel told the Evansville Press regarding the Bronco, "We feel this vehicle may or may not be a suspicious vehicle. As long as no one comes forward to claim the vehicle, we're going to assume it's the abductors. The longer it goes, the more we suspect." The day after Heather was abducted, the Evansville Courier and Press published a short blurb on page 4 of their paper, writing that Kentucky State Police are investigating the abduction of a 23-year-old Clay, Kentucky woman who was reportedly taken from the Kentucky shore of the Ohio River at gunpoint by an unidentified man Saturday. Troopers had few details, only saying Miss Teague was abducted a little after 1 p.m. by a white man who was about 25 or 30. He reportedly stands about 6'2", weighs around 210 pounds, and has dark bushy hair and a beard. He was wearing cut-off denim jeans and black tennis shoes. Despite someone having literally witnessed Heather's abduction happen, law enforcement openly said that they were having very little luck moving forward in the search. Trooper Abel told the Evansville Courier 2 days after the abduction, "We're expanding the search area, taking calls from the public and interviewing residents of the area, and anyone driving up to the beach. However, we have no substantial leads yet. In the same article, Rhonda Teague, Heather's stepmother, said that nobody that knows her knows anybody that fits that description, referencing the man that Walthall described to the police. There were continued questions as to why Walthall had taken so long to call the police. Trooper Abel said that not only had Walthall initially believed to have witnessed some sort of prank, he'd also seen an officer on the beach not long after the abduction and assumed it had already been called in. That officer had actually been responding to a call about an ATV being ridden in the water and was completely unaware of the abduction. On day 4 of the investigation, police released a sketch of the man who Walthall saw on the beach. The sketch showed a Caucasian male with dark hair and a full dark beard with a mustache. This sketch was circulated along with the information regarding a red and white Bronco. Trooper Abel continued to assure the community that the state police were doing everything they could to find the suspect, who would hopefully lead them to Heather. Abel told the Courier-Journal, "We've been to houses and talked to the family. We've stopped cars that were driven by people resembling the suspect, and we've got nothing." One thing that law enforcement did feel confident about was that the suspect they were looking for was a pretty violent person. Heather had been missing for 4 days, and her family was hanging on to any shred of hope that she might return home. Rhonda told the Evansville Press, "We don't want to leave the phone. The waiting is the hardest. Every time the phone rings, we jump thinking it might be Heather. You always see this stuff on the news, and it always happens to the other person. You don't know how bad it is until it happens to you." It seemed strange to law enforcement that they had no other witnesses who'd seen anything strange on the beach that day. Trooper Abel felt that someone had information, saying, "But they just don't want to tell us. There were 500 to 600 people there that afternoon, and no one saw anything. We find that hard to believe." As the search for Heather continued and gained more publicity, investigators dug more into her background and the weeks and months leading up to her disappearance. In an article in the Evansville Courier, writer Maureen Hayden wrote, "What's emerging is a portrait of a troubled young woman who moved from house to house in recent weeks, keeping most of her belongings, including a diary of sorts, packed in her car." David Osborne, a retired chief of detectives with the Kentucky State Police, told the Messenger that Heather had reportedly threatened suicide just a few weeks before her abduction. The same article reads, "Police would have presumed her disappearance was the result of a suicide on the shores of the Ohio River, if it had not been for the eyewitness report of one man." One of the official police reports filed reads, "Victim has a history of drug abuse and strange erratic behavior, and was reported missing 2 weeks prior to redacted to KSP. Victim was located several days later and advised she was just running around." Sarah Teague, Heather's mother, confirmed that her daughter had become increasingly withdrawn recently. Sarah's boyfriend agreed, but told the Courier that Heather's personal problems had no relationship to her disappearance.
Not long after the suspect sketch was released to the public, Kentucky State Police received a call from someone who said that they believed their neighbor resembled the suspect's sketch and drove the same vehicle. That neighbor was 30-year-old ex-con Marty Dill, who lived in the Henderson County area, the same area where Heather had been abducted from. Starting your own business is seriously so intimidating, and when Al and I started this podcasting business, we wish we had Shopify to help us through those tough times. Shopify is a commerce platform that is behind literally millions of businesses globally, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to some brands you might love that are just getting started. With Shopify, you can accelerate your content creation because it's packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product's photography. You can also get the word out about your business like you have a fancy marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling. Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything. We're talking managing inventory to shipping internationally and processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you are ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/murderdiaries. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries. Shopify.com/murderdiaries.
Dill had several prior arrests for drug-related crimes and soliciting young girls. 13 months before Heather's abduction, Dill was a prime suspect in a sexual assault in nearby Blackford, Kentucky. However, the victim couldn't positively identify him due to a partial face covering he'd worn. A few months prior to Heather's abduction, Dill was pulled over by police. There had been a call from a concerned citizen that a man was driving around the area trying to solicit underage girls for sex. They found several items in his vehicle that concerned them during this stop, including marijuana, duct tape, rubber gloves, rope, and 2 loaded handguns. The detective that arrested Dill that night later told journalist Greg Olson that if he hadn't arrested Dill that night, he believed a girl would have died at his hands. When Walthall was shown a driver's license photo of Dill, he said it looked like the man that he saw. What wasn't mentioned, however, was that the license photo was 9 years old. Despite this, KSP and the FBI felt that Dill was their man. They moved in on him in early September. Dill lived in a mobile home on his family's large property in Henderson County. They saw Dill's red and white Bronco hidden in bushes on the property. Dill's uncle was a current Henderson County police officer and went inside the mobile home first, and alone in an attempt to defuse the situation, as Dill had told his wife and friends that if police came to get him, he'd shoot himself. As FBI agents and police officers waited outside, a single shot rang out from inside the mobile home. Dill had shot himself, ending his own life before anyone asked him any questions about Heather. After Dill's death, more friends and acquaintances of his came forward to police, telling them that they suspected he was involved in Heather's disappearance, but were too scared to come forward. People also said that just after Heather's abduction, Dill began parking his Bronco in the bushes on the property. A search of the Bronco found 2 drops of blood inside of the tailgate. There were also numerous fibers and hairs inside the vehicle. But KSP said that because they didn't have a victim, they were unable to compare the hairs found.
To law enforcement, it seemed pretty straightforward that Marty Dill was their man. His driver's license photo sealed the deal for them. Unfortunately, Heather's mother, Sarah, didn't think that they had the right person, or at least that Dill had an accomplice.
At the time of his death, Dill didn't have shaggy hair or a beard, like Walthall described in his eyewitness report. In fact, he was nearly bald. His release paperwork from his recent jail stint listed him as bald. Reportedly, he had to shave both his hair and beard after a lice breakout in the prison. Police didn't seem to think this information was pertinent. They had a grand jury convened in hopes of proving that Dill was behind Heather's disappearance. Unfortunately, this was unsuccessful. Dill's wife pleaded the fifth to every question. The KSB kept the case open, but told Sarah that Dill had murdered her daughter. Despite what seemed to investigators like a closed case, Heather's family was left with hundreds of unanswered questions. Most importantly, where was Heather? Not long after Dill's death, Heather's mother hired 2 local private investigators in hopes of them helping to locate her daughter. One of the PIs claimed to have psychic abilities that she felt would provide additional help in finding Heather. The 2 PIs told the Evansville Courier that there were 3 sites in Kentucky that they would like to investigate further: Dill's property, Newburgh Beach on the Kentucky side where the abduction took place, and a 3rd site that they didn't want to disclose. Loved ones continued to organize searches for Heather, which followed prayer circles, hoping for a positive outcome. People came out in droves, on horseback and 4-wheelers, with police even bringing a helicopter with a heat-seeking device to search the beach area. Unfortunately, they found nothing. But Trooper April said that they would continue looking until they had no more leads. He told the Evansville Press, "We'll keep going until we run out of leads, but we're not anywhere near that now. The information has slowed down, but we're still following up on 8 or 10 tips a day." Heather's younger brother, Nathaniel, waited for any news about his big sister, saying that it was incredibly difficult to be without her. He told the Evansville Press, "I miss Heather. We always used to do everything together. She used to take me everywhere." The family followed up on every single piece of information they got, however far-fetched it might have seemed. The Evansville Courier reported on Friday, September 8th, almost 2 weeks after Heather disappeared, that Sarah Teague led a group of about 30 volunteers in a search near the abduction site. Sarah explained, "I have a good tip from a born-again Christian woman that she saw Heather's foot sticking out from a stand of trees underneath some brush. Though police didn't organize that search, there was an officer on scene in case anything was found. Trooper Abel appreciated that the family continued to search. However, he told the press that the area they were searching had been checked over multiple times by both people and 3 different tracking dogs. This leads us to speculate that Heather left that area probably in a motor vehicle." The same article reads, "In the meantime, Mrs. Teague continued distributing flyers with a photo of her daughter and another composite drawing produced by state police of a bearded suspect. She says the person pictured is not Dill and that she thinks more than one person was involved." On October 27, 1995, 2 months after Heather was abducted, the Evansville Courier announced that law enforcement had another suspect in Heather's abduction and that a grand jury would be investigating next month. Kentucky State Police Lieutenant David Osborne wouldn't name the suspect, but the paper reported that multiple people had been subpoenaed already, including Dill's son Joshua. Reportedly, this came along the same time as a report came through to police that Heather may have been seen shortly after her abduction. Michelle Morgan told investigators that she saw a woman that looked like Heather inside of a car struggling with a man sometime between 2:30 and 3 p.m. Morgan said, "I don't know if it was her for sure, but there was a 99% resemblance. She didn't want to be in that car." Morgan's description of the man matched the composite sketch of Dill. Sarah Teague reported that police told her that a grand jury could return indictments against 2 of Dill's relatives, and that one of the relatives closely resembled the man that Morgan described. Shortly after this article was published, law enforcement denied having an additional suspect, but said they were convening a grand jury to continue the investigation into Heather's abduction. Ultimately, no indictments were issued. In June of 1996, the 2 spots of blood that had been found inside of Dill's Bronco were finally tested. One speck was found not to belong to Heather, and the other? It was too small to make a determination. Trooper Abel explained to the Evansville Courier, "This leads us no place. It doesn't eliminate Dill. It doesn't tell us anything other than we don't know. This doesn't tell us whether she was in the vehicle or not."
Almost a year had passed since Heather had been dragged into the woods and disappeared. And despite investigators reporting that her abductor was now dead, her mother knew there was a lot more to the story. Unfortunately, years continued to pass and the investigation into Heather's abduction grew cold.
In the fall of 2003, a Medina, Ohio detective was finally able to get a confession from a suspect who he had long believed to be responsible for the murder of a young woman. 26-year-old Catherine Fetzer had been having an affair with a coworker named Christopher Below. In November of 1991, Catherine disappeared. Below maintained his innocence in any involvement with Catherine's disappearance until 2003. Below confessed to Detective Scott Thomas that he'd shot and killed Catherine and disposed of her remains in a dumpster. He was sentenced to 11 to 18 years in prison, after declining a lighter sentence in exchange for the location of Catherine's remains, which have still never been found. Detective Thomas and his colleagues do not believe that Below disposed of Catherine's remains as he said he did. He had made many comments in the past to people that he knew how to get rid of bodies, and that his saying was, "No body, no crime." With these statements, his proximity to where Heather was abducted from, and what he knew about Below, Detective Thomas had suspicions that he might have been involved in Heather's abduction, along with several other women's disappearances. Below grew up in Henderson County, and reports said that it was very likely that he knew Marty Dill. Detective Thomas said that Below was living in Henderson County in August of '95 when Heather was abducted. Detectives spoke to the only eyewitness, Tim Walthall, to see if he believed that Below could have been the man he saw on the beach that day abducting Heather. Walthall told 14 News, "The body features particularly were similar, but that's all. And I told police, and this is important, that I still would not change my story, and that the person I saw on the beach that day still to me is the person that I identified, and that's Mr. Dill." Below, of course, denies any knowledge of Heather's abduction.
Though Walthall was certain that Below was not the man that he saw on the beach with Heather that day, there is still a lot of speculation as to Below being involved. Many believe that he and Dill could have worked together to abduct and likely murder Heather.
Sarah has remained adamant and vocal about the fact that she believes that she and the public are being misled about Heather's disappearance. In a press conference on the 20-year anniversary of her daughter's disappearance, she said that the Kentucky State Police remain adamant that Dill fit the description that Walthall gave, and that he ended his life that day because he didn't want to return to jail. They reportedly told her multiple times that though the case was still open, it was essentially closed because they knew who was responsible. Sarah said that she has a photo of Dill that's dated 1 month before Heather's abduction that shows him balding with very little hair. Dill's mother said that her son had a very short beard and hair when she saw him just 4 days prior to the abduction. Sarah insisted that many people who'd been around Dill agreed that he cut off his hair quite some time before Heather went missing. Not to mention, the KSP reportedly refused to release his mugshot that showed him balding. Sarah also felt that something didn't add up about Walthall's 911 call. She said that in 2008, the KSP finally played her the 911 call from Walthall. However, it was different than the one that was released to the public. Sarah has questioned whether Walthall ever even saw the man's face clearly enough to make a sketch. There are now conflicting reports and articles saying that the abductor was wearing a wig and a mosquito net, based only off of Walthall's account. However, there is no official public information supporting this. Sarah believes that it's possible that a false 911 call could have been recorded and staged in order to make sure that the given description matched Dill. Throughout the years, several sets of remains have been discovered throughout Kentucky and in neighboring states, bringing a mixed sense of hope and dread to Heather's family. Both fortunately and unfortunately, none of the remains belonged to Heather. In August of 2025, Kentucky State Police led the exhumation of Marty Dill's remains. They told the press that they were planning to collect Dill's DNA, but they didn't say what they'd be comparing it to. Sarah said that despite this update in the case, she has received no communication from law enforcement. Sarah said, "I have no communication. I have no victim's advocate. I have nobody who returns my calls. State police, I'll try to get a message to them. I get nothing. So this morning, I had to learn from somebody I've never personally met that her dad or her husband was a gravedigger and the FBI had contacted them that Marty Dill's body was being exhumed." She remains steadfast in her belief that the DNA won't match, saying, "I'm hoping that within 24 hours, that we'll know that Marty Dill's DNA is nowhere to be found on Heather's bathing suit bottoms. And hopefully the person who took Heather will be proclaimed loud and clear this time tomorrow." Sarah is still actively searching for the truth in her daughter's abduction. There are many rumors as to what happened to Heather. Some believe that her recent involvement with drugs resulted in her death. Others say that Heather was a victim of human trafficking. Many believe that Dill and Below worked together to abduct and murder Heather, but there has not been any additional evidence released to the public. Heather Teague has still not been located. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Heather Teague, please contact the Kentucky State Police at 270-826-3312 or Sarah Teague at 270-826-8343.
Make sure to follow us on all of our socials, including YouTube at The Murder Diaries Pod or The Murder Diaries Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And until then,
Stay safe.
bye.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Kay Jewelers' early Black Friday sale is happening now. Get up to 50% off Black Friday deals and up to 40% off everything else. Don't miss this sale. Start your season with savings, only at Kay. Exclusions apply. See Kay.com/exclusions for details.